So I'm Brian Dillard. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Antonio. I was originally a Smart City Administrator for the City of San Antonio when I started our Smart City program. So I'm definitely excited to be here today and talk about what we're doing now, what we've done in the past, and what we're doing as we move forward. We've got a great team here of Smart Cities leadership. They're going to tell you more about the program in more focus, but I want to talk about the background. So Smart Cities program for the City of San Antonio sparked off in 2017, 2018. We were hired on as a staff in late 2018. That staff was 2 people, and now it's 4 as of this year. So we're very excited to be able to produce this. How many of you were involved in the Smart City survey that we had over the last year? I'm glad to see so many hands going up. This is really exciting. That means our team did a great job. You all have created what a smart city means to San Antonio. Not just the city, big city of San Antonio, but San Antonio as a community. That's Bexar County. We have a great partnership across the board. We work with our Smart SA partners. We've got a number of Smart SA partners in the house. If you'll raise your hands maybe. SAWS, CPS, VIA, they're all talking to our residents, so that's a good thing. I want to talk about what we've done over the last few years. So you'll notice the City of San Antonio has turned a direct focus onto digital inclusion. Has anybody gotten that digital inclusion survey and assessment that came out to you? That program is a result of what Smart Cities has done. We realized other cities are focusing in on autonomous vehicles, smart streetlights, and all these new age technologies and innovations. Those are very important. We want to focus on what's happening in the future. However, we knew at the foundational level, we needed to start off with the basic principles of connecting residents to that technology at the base. So our digital inclusion program, which our digital inclusion administrator, Rhea Pape, is right back here. She's leading that effort. We've got a tremendous amount of dollars going into that. Federal, state dollars are coming in, and San Antonio's top list in the state to get that funding. If you didn't notice, Texas is top of the funding list. That was announced yesterday. We got $3.3 billion coming in out of $48 billion from the federal level. California got 1.8. That's a tremendous difference, and we've done that through the work that we've done with you all as residents. So I want to push that forward. The work we do as a smart city needs that continued focus. It needs your investment, it needs your time and efforts. I know that's a lot to ask from a volunteer space, but it's really just your input. I need your insight on challenges. I need your insight on what you face day to day, whether it's transportation, healthcare, food insecurity, senior services. That's our focus as we move forward as a smart city. I'm very excited to be in that space. I'm very excited to have our team lead that forward. I'm going to hand it over to Emily Royal. She's going to speak more directly about what the Smart Cities Roadmap means to you all, what it means to us as City of San Antonio, big city this time, understanding how do we operate. We've got 40 plus departments in the City of San Antonio. How do we all align when it comes to 5, 10 years from now? How do we test out those technologies, those innovative approaches when it comes to serving you as a resident better and increasing all of our quality of lives? Emily, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Brian. First of all, my heart is full. It is amazing to see all of you come out. You're all collaborators. We know many of you, residents, partners, businesses. So we really appreciate you coming out and showing up tonight. It matters a lot. Before I start, I definitely want to thank our team. In particular, this woman right here, Lauren. Lauren is the architect of this event, and you're going to see a lot more great things from her, so thank you, Lauren. Now, I want to just start by level setting a little bit on smart cities. If you Google smart cities, you're going to see something like this. Whole lot of blue, fancy-looking icons swimming in some weird connected digital space. What does this mean? We don't know what this means. I didn't know that you could hold a city in the palm of your hand, but if I Google smart cities, I discover that's possible, right? So all that to say that what our goal was for the Smart Cities Roadmap is not to Google what smart cities means and then come tell you all what that plan should look like. Our goal instead was to go directly to residents, to our businesses, to our city staff, and ask them, what does a smart city mean to you? And then our job is to serve that mission and vision for the community of San Antonio. So that's what our team is doing. Why is this an important conversation right now? For a lot of reasons. As Brian mentioned, there is a ton of investment going on in smart cities as an industry. Technology to improve government services, to improve infrastructure, our streets, our roads, our internet connectivity. And we estimate that there's about $2.5 trillion that's going to be spent on this industry globally by 2025. San Antonio should have a piece of that. Secondly, the Biden administration is very interested in investing in our infrastructure right now. They're very interested in providing municipalities with financial support, unprecedented, to do this kind of work locally. So again, we want to be competitive for those federal funds. Third, and most importantly, there is a whole lot of new tech out there to wrap our heads around. How many of you have heard about ChatGPT lately? How many of you are scared of ChatGPT? How many of you are stoked for ChatGPT? All right, the room's 50-50 on that one, right? So that's an important illustration of why it's important for our community to come together to identify what our expectations and values are for these technologies before we move forward, right? So emerging technologies pose new opportunities and also new risks to our community. We gotta mitigate that. And then finally, y'all, we just came out of a pandemic. It completely transformed how we do business, and it transformed your expectations of city services. People work remotely. That's a total game changer for how our economy works, how our downtown functions, and what y'all expect from city government. So for all of those reasons, San Antonio needs a bold and innovative approach to building an accessible, connected, and efficient city that keeps our residents informed and safe. I didn't make that up. That came directly from y'all. Our residents told us that this is what a smart city means. So we're not the Google Blue floating space thing, we're this for San Antonio. Oh, thanks guys. It's all you. All right, so who are we? This is our team. We've got Jeffrey right here. He's our Smart City Senior Manager. We've got Carla Campos. She has nearly a decade of experience at the city working in all various departments in San Antonio. She's fantastic. And Lauren Cuttin, that I introduced earlier. If you see them, talk to them. They're here for you, so please connect with them. Brian went over the background, so I don't want to talk too much about this, but really, we got launched in 2017 by City Council. They established 3 innovation zones: downtown, Brooks, and the Medical Center. And these are places where we are charged with working with our partners to innovate and build new technologies and solutions. Those partners are listed below. Many of them are here tonight, and they together form the Smart SA partnership. So the biggest takeaway I want you all to come away with this evening is that the Smart Cities Roadmap flipped the script. A lot of other communities that build Smart City roadmaps basically provide that information to residents and ask, is this okay with y'all? We did the total opposite. We asked you first, what is a smart city? What did we hear? We heard 5 things. Our city should be accessible, it should be connected, efficient, informed, and safe. And those are our guiding principles. So all the projects we take on, all the projects we do are aligned to those core values that came from y'all. The third point is, how do we do the work? What is the work? So we launched what's called the Smarter Together test bed, and it focuses on 5 challenge areas that are the direct responses from residents about what they want to see in terms of improved city services and improved use of technology in their daily lives. And I'll tell you a little bit about what those are. The goals of our roadmap, pretty clear. Provide that community vision so everybody knows what we're trying to accomplish as a community. Guide investment in partnerships, I go to the federal government and say, we want $40 million to improve this industry, they're gonna say, where's your plan? We have a plan. Third, and this goes out to our business community, we have an open call to our problem solvers in San Antonio. That is our researchers, our startups, our entrepreneurs, our nonprofit partners. We want to issue an open call to you to help us solve for the challenges that are in our roadmap. This is a community initiative and effort. And then finally, we want to level set on our Smart Cities team. We've got a lot of new talent on our team, and we want you guys to know who we are. As I said, we started with engagement about a year ago. So this is the culmination of all of that effort. We hosted more than 20 community events. We participated in existing events. We showed up in person, boots on the ground, and connected with residents. It's a little bit about what that looks like. Many of you may have attended some of those events. And the result of all of that is an answer to this question: where can technology improve your life and experience with local government? You all said 5 things. Access to public information, public safety, resilience and environmental quality, safe infrastructure, and access to transportation. And guess what? All of our panelists tonight are game changers in each of those spaces, so we want to give them a platform to talk about what they do and are working on. And all around you are folks who work on those issues as well in our community. I'm going to just talk a little bit about each of those challenge areas, what we heard from you all. First, access to public information. It is clear that our residents want more ways to have their voices heard. They want to participate in decision-making processes of the city. Lack of awareness about new initiatives or programs, lack of access to internet connectivity, and lack of skills or tools to get that information inhibits us getting their feedback. That's not okay. We need to improve that. Some examples of how we could improve that and things that we might want to do in our test bed, and this is for the business community to listen to. Having more open data workshops in underserved neighborhoods to help them understand the resources we have for data and information at the city and how you can learn how to use those tools more effectively. A one-stop mobile app for all of the city services. Imagine if you could just go to one spot and you can pay your energy bill, you can pay your water bill, and get your marriage license, whatever you need to do, just in one place. Public safety. A lot of folks told us about what public safety meant to them. A lot of it had to do with being able to feel safe in and on the street, even if that meant being able to actually cross a sidewalk in a way that isn't harmful for a person with disabilities. Emergency response times. We want to know that if we're going to call our emergency response team, that they're going to come and they're going to be on time, and we want to know how quickly they're going to get here, improving those emergency response times. And safeguarding communities from profiling and discrimination. These are all things that we heard from you all. So we have some other examples of how we might be able to solve for that in our community. Imagine instead of sending a first responder to go into a building on fire, what if we sent a robot or a drone or some kind of technology to assess that and not have to put that person's life at risk? These are the types of innovations that we can make possible. Resilience and environmental quality. It is hot. We're dealing with it. We have a lot of talented folks in this room, including Julia Murphy over there, who are working on this issue. How can we work together as a community to mitigate the impacts of heat? It is coming, it's here, there's not a whole lot we can do about it at this point. So there's a lot of work that can be done in this space. Safe infrastructure. One of my team members told me a story when he was out tabling about a woman in a wheelchair who came to him practically in tears, talking about how hard it is to be in a wheelchair on San Antonio streets. Imagine that in this heat. What kind of improvements can we make to help that woman navigate our downtown or any of our areas in San Antonio more effectively? And how can we use technology to potentially do that? And finally, access to transportation. We want safer bike lanes. We want dedicated bus lanes. We want easy ways to pay for and transition across lots of different types of mobility. I see some thumbs up. I see some desperate pleas. These are all things that we as a community are prioritizing, right? When it comes to transportation, being able to be mobile. And that has a lot of positive public health impacts as well. And there's a lot of data to reflect on that. So, with that being said, I love how it took me to get to the very end of my presentation for all y'all to be quiet. But hopefully someone's recording it so you can go back and reference the notes if you want. Just kidding. We've got an open door to government, y'all. It was really challenging to get it up, but we've got it up. It's accessible. It's smarter together. sa.com. You can scan that QR code and get right in there. And if you're a resident, you're gonna have one experience on our website. If you're a vendor or a company, you're gonna have a totally different experience on that website. We're trying to be open and really look to you all to help us problem solve in our community. So on the site, you can learn more about the roadmap, you can download it. You can also schedule a meeting with us. Even if you're a resident, you can come talk to us. We'll have office hours available for residents and vendors. You can also pitch your solution or idea. You don't have to be a company to do it. And that's our goal, is to be connected, informed, inclusive community and city government for you all as we move forward into the new normal that we all live in. So, I am more than pleased to introduce our moderators. We're gonna do this a little differently. We're not gonna have you guys sit for 30-minute panels and try to remember what everyone's saying. We're gonna do lightning talks. So each panel is gonna be about 15 minutes max. We're gonna have time for Q&A as part of that 15 minutes. We're gonna rotate one panel for each of our challenge areas that we shared with you today. The folks that we're bringing on these panels are change agents in our community. I encourage you to get to know them. And we've got two excellent moderators. Robert Rivard, who is the founder and columnist for the SA Report, as well as the host of the Big City Small Town podcast, which is appropriately named. And Beto Altamirano, who is the co-founder and CEO of Iris, formerly City Flag. These are the folks who built the 311 SA app, if you've ever used it. So please, round of applause for our moderators tonight. They're going to help us guide the conversation, and I would like to first start by inviting Robert Rivard to come introduce his panel.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Office of Innovation, Lauren. How about a round of applause for the great team at the city? And Centro San Antonio, they're in the house. They're the co-sponsors. Trish DeBerry, the new CEO. Thank you, Trish, and your team. We need to do this more often, don't we? Yes, inside air-conditioned spaces like this. Thank you, Emily, for taking this inside when it's 105 outside. All right, and thank you for keeping it down. The acoustics in this room are a challenge, and I want you to hear the panelists. So we're going to get right into it. Basically, they each have about 5 minutes. Then we're going to invite the audience to spend 5 minutes asking questions, and then I'll give it up to Beto, and he'll do the same thing, and then I'll be back, and he'll be back, and I'll be back. And we should be finished by about 11:30, 11:45 tonight, so that's great. All right, the very first employee of the Rivard Report was Iris Dimmick. That's about 11 or 12 years ago. A lot of you know her from her coverage of City Hall, now her coverage of housing and poverty and other issues. But when we hired her, we told her her beat was San Antonio, all of it, because she was the only person we had. So she's done an incredible job. It's been great to work with her, and we're really happy to have you, Iris, back up here on stage. And also, Siboney Diaz-Sanchez is with now the city of San Antonio. He currently needs no introduction. Siboney originally was, when I first met her, I believe, was with an architect with Overland Partners. She was off to Boston for a couple of years to work in the nonprofit space in public housing, and is now back here doing that in the city of San Antonio. And if I get my iPad to turn on, I can tell you that she's the community engagement administrator for the neighborhood housing services department. So great to have both of you here. Basically, I'm going to give one question real quick to both of you. Iris, how's public information working in San Antonio in the digital age? And maybe you can share some of your experiences, good and bad, in accessing vital information to the work you do.
Well, we only have 10 minutes, Bob, so let's, yeah, 5 minutes for me. But, I mean, it's a mixed bag a little bit. It kind of depends on what information you're...
Quiet in the back, please. We can hear you, but we can't hear us.
Sure. It depends on what information you're seeking, which department you're seeking it from. I think a little bit of that has to do with the different departments have different like communication folks on their team. I think generally it's worked fairly well, but I will say I have waited 3 months to get a certain information request responded to. But I think the city has done a good job of responding to some like very general, very broad requests by creating dashboards online. And we saw that play out during the COVID pandemic when every single news agency across the city and statewide was requesting information from every single PIO and every single department. And creating that dashboard, it took a while to actually set up, but it was a huge help. Others have also followed the affordable housing dashboard. There's the emergency housing assistance program dashboard. But I feel like a lot of those dashboards were created because of a city council general push for them, not necessarily because it's what the community was pushing for or what journalists were necessarily pushing for. So I feel like there could be an opportunity there to maybe analyze what information community members are asking for the most out of public information requests and kind of figure out where that lands on the new website. The new website is a vast improvement over the old website for the city. I know that there's some tweaks that are still being worked out, but it's a really good first step, I think.
Siboney, can we imagine a world where all the public information is digitized and presented in a user-friendly dashboard, coming from the private sector, then nonprofit? Now you're working for an enormous government agency that has 9,000 civilian employees, 3,000 public safety workers. That's a lot of information and a lot of people, and not all of them are digitally literate. So where do you find yourself in that right now?
That's a big question. I will say that dashboards, like depending on how we're trying to define user-friendly, Iris just mentioned that dashboards can be helpful for collecting raw data, but not everyone knows how to use a dashboard. Not everyone knows what a dashboard is. I mean, the city consistently uses acronyms that I think my role really requires breaking down, right? Iris, you just said PIO. That's Public Information Officer. I am a PIO. So a big part of my job is actually making sure that acronyms are spelled out as a way to create access to information. I work in affordable housing. I started in May of 2022. I have one staff person, Maribel Arauza, who is our public relations manager here in the back. Shout out, she's a rock star. And since May of 2022, we've had over 200 inquiries, and that has led to over 100 stories. That's media, that's radio, that's everything. And since then, right, we've awarded affordable housing bond funds to 31 projects. Thank you, Maribel. So I think going back to your question, we're really still trying to understand how people want to process information, and so much about dashboards is a single stream of information. Community engagement as the administrator, really thinking about the spectrum for empowerment, because if there's no feedback loop, if we're not evolving and learning from how we're communicating with communities, then our affordable housing processes are not going to be informed by the people that are most affected by that work.
Yeah, I wonder how many people that you're working with are on the wrong side of the digital divide. They don't know how to go online and fill out an application, whether it's for ready to work or whether it's for housing assistance or whatever. They don't have the hardware, they don't have the broadband, and they may not have the literacy. And so that's a challenge because we're in this all digital world we're talking about, but not everybody lives in it.
Yeah, I would say even we had this affordable housing bond. How many of you all know that there was an affordable housing bond that was passed in May of, awesome, that's pretty good. So it's 150 million, about 81 million has already been allocated through city council votes in this past year. One of those categories, of the 5 categories, is for home rehab. And last summer, we had the application open for 6 weeks. We had over 3,500 applications, and that meant that we had 17 public events to make sure that we were helping people apply. Because back to your point, not everyone knows how to utilize the website, submitting, it's intimidating, there were submissions that were required. And so how is the city also holding ourselves responsible to have events to facilitate that, understanding how to use a dashboard?
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference between, quantity and quality. Like, we can put all of the information out publicly for everyone to look at, but unless you, we've talked about this earlier, unless you kind of contextualize it and actually make it useful for people. I would rather have one really useful, authentic dashboard with lots of data that kind of shows you how to use it than 1,000, spreadsheets on tiny little data items. Does that make sense?
Anybody out there have a question?
We're talking really fast because
If not, we'll just keep going here. I know you're all bashful. All right, we'll just keep going.
There is a dashboard for the affordable housing bond. So there is a strategic housing implementation plan, also known as SHIP, which is a 10-year plan to preserve and produce affordable housing. It has 36 strategies. It's a 77-page document. It's available on sa.gov/NHSD, but there's a dashboard that actually tracks that information. Again, it goes back to how we're sharing information. I think another key piece here is so much about affordable housing is related to the humanity of our work, and if we're not doing storytelling alongside data sharing, then the work is actually not real for a lot of people.
I feel like everyone in this room is on the right side of transparency, but I also feel, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Siboney, that over the arc of my career, I've sometimes felt like freedom of information, access to that is a cat and mouse game between journalists and government, and that not everybody that is in public service believes that they should immediately make available a lot of the information that they have at hand. And I think there's some cultural change going on in the city. It's even evident in things like website design, or the very fact we have an Office of Innovation, which I think was actually formed maybe in 2007, but it's obviously accelerated enormously since then in the last few years. So I wonder what it's like working in a large bureaucratic organization with a lot of layers, sort of being an evangelical voice for this kind of change.
I think what really helps, and Maribel really reminds me, right, we work together on this, but my responsibility is to the communities that I serve. And so any kind of bureaucratic system that I am needing to work within is okay too, because I also come from architecture, as you mentioned. We never say we're doing architecture, we say we're practicing architecture, which already implies that there needs to be an evolution in it. So I think part of my role is ensuring that I am getting exposure and not just going to meetings, community meetings and speaking out, but actually listening, and then coming back and making sure that I'm weaving processes in, things that I'm hearing back into systems, because my loyalty is to serving communities that I'm a part of.
Ira, go ahead.
Well, and I think there is a kind of natural push and pull between any local or state governments and freedom of information requests, but I've only worked in San Antonio for 10 years, so I've even seen kind of a shift towards there being more receptance to those requests and have them being expedited. I think unfortunately, journalists, we kind of have a place of privilege where we can text the person that we know to hey, what's going on with this request. The average person may not be able to do that. So I think as close as we can get to those timely responses for any request, be it media or someone from the community, we are technically no different from anyone else. We don't have any sort of special license for that. So I think it should be, and I do see some sort of push towards that in general. But yeah, I still get a fair amount of like Attorney General responses to my requests, which means the Attorney General, like they've challenged it to the Attorney General.
You know, in defense of city employees, there are media individuals that just go fishing and create an enormous amount of work for people that are in the public information space because they're just looking under rocks hoping to find something, and that's incredibly time consuming, and it's also not very helpful for relationship building.
I think for me too, housing is incredibly complicated and relational and very personal. So sometimes responses need to be just carefully coordinated. It's not about any sort of strategy to hide anything, right? It's like, I want to make sure I'm giving, I always had an inquiry, I want to make sure I'm giving her the most coordinated answer. And that might take an hour longer than the other answer. I also want to note that I view my media relations, and not just because Iris and I were doing the math, we've known each other for a while, not just because I know Iris, but because there is a responsibility that I have to share information about the work that we're doing in affordable housing with communities. And if Iris is willing to write a story and share information, she's doing work with me, right? This is a collaborative effort to share information as the public information officer with another public information officer. This is helpful.
What do you think the public, your readers, make of this, Iris? Because it's $150 million that was in the bond. People may not be aware of this, but housing has never been in the city bonds before now, so it's kind of historic in nature, and not everybody agrees with it politically. And there are doubters over whether the efficacy of it will justify the expense. And I wonder what kind of feedback you get from people that want more information about this. They want more accountability journalism about it, and how do you handle that?
Well, I would say generally there's more acceptance today of affordable housing in general. Where the rubber meets the road, though, is the permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless, for people experiencing chronic homelessness. That's where most of the demands for information comes from. And we work really hard to kind of explain what that means. It's a fairly new concept for San Antonio, but it's not a new concept in the world of how to address those types of issues. So, I mean, I think our role, as much as the city's role, is to educate and inform people on what that housing actually means and what it doesn't mean. It's not a shelter. It's actually like case management and like informed care of folks experiencing homelessness.
Last call for a question from the audience.
1 minute, 0 minutes.
Anybody? All right, well, we're going to finish on time. Siboney and Iris, thank you very much. Like lightning around here.
All right, I'd like to invite Beto Altamirano to come up and introduce his panelists for the next lightning talk. Beto.
Hey everyone! Oh, that was a little loud. First, I want to give a round of applause for the Office of Innovation, the team members. They worked tirelessly in putting this together. So, a big round of applause to all the Office of Innovation. So, we're going to talk about resilience and environmental quality, right? You feel the heat outside? It's climate change. I think it's happening. Some people may disagree, but I think it's happening. So I'm going to introduce two people that I admire a lot, Julia Murphy and Stephen Lucke, who are here. Let's start with Julia, who is the Deputy Chief at the Office of Sustainability of San Antonio. And social entrepreneur here in San Antonio is Stephen Lucke, Executive Director of Gardopia. Just in time. So you know the format. So we're going to do 10 minutes of questions that I'm going to ask, and then 5 minutes of questions from the audience. So think about some of the questions that you might have that you want to ask both Julia and also Stephen. So my first question, is about technology and data, right? When I think about data, I think data is a new gold, right? Data-driven decisions make life easier. And so when we think about resilience and environmental issues that we're facing, what are the challenges that we must address to be able to provide real-time data to residents? And how does that look like, right? When I think about smart cities, I think about smart citizens. And not just intellectually, but equipping our citizens, our residents of San Antonio with the right information so that they can understand what the city is doing for them, but they can also make good decisions for themselves. So Julia, this question is for you.
Thank you, Beto. And thanks to everyone who's here. I've already heard a number of themes that relate to the work that we do in the Office of Sustainability. So just as a background, we own and operate the city's climate action and adaptation plan that was passed a couple of years ago by City Council. And so we're now heavily into implementation. And so data is critical to making the decisions that we need to make on a daily basis, including prioritizing those climate action strategies that we want to put out in the community that are going to actually make a difference. So the themes that I've been hearing relate to this work as well, and that is access to the information to start with so that people can inform themselves. We have a whole strategy around education and empowerment. That data that is out there also needs to be from a trusted source, especially in the world that we're living in and the topic that we're dealing with, which you kind of teed up, is not necessarily, not everyone is on the same page with whether or not climate change is occurring. So we try to communicate through ways that resonate with the people that are accessing that data. How is it going to affect your pocketbook? How is it going to affect your health? What things are important to you, and how do we then communicate that back to the strategies that we're putting in place? And we're literally asking people, who cares? So if you've gone past our booth over there, you can find out more about who cares. If you care, you can join the community of others who care, but it's really supposed to be a galvanizing call to action to get people on the same page and get them the information they need.
What are the challenges that you're facing in terms of capturing that data and then providing that data to the audience, to the community members of San Antonio?
I would say, in our case, time. Time is of the essence, and we do a greenhouse gas inventory every 2 years. It takes almost that long to gather up the data that we need from all the sectors across the whole community, run those through the modeling scenarios and the calculations to come back with the greenhouse gas inventory that sort of tells us which way we're headed. Good news in San Antonio, we're heading slightly down. We may have reached peak emissions. We don't know yet. We'll have to see as we keep, but 2 years is a long time to wait to get that new data to be able to make critical decisions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Julia, for that response. My next question is for Stephen. So the question is, what are the opportunities and barriers for educating San Antonio's youth, marginalized communities, and low-income communities about healthy foods, sustainability, and urban farming? I mean, I read recently a UTSA report that said that 16% of San Antonians have diabetes, and 33% have pre-diabetes here in San Antonio. That is alarming. It is scary, right? When you think about the health of our community. What do you think we should do, Stephen? I know you're leading that effort with Gardopia, but can you shed some light on this issue?
Well, that's a great question. So you gave some stats. In I think 07 or 08, San Antonio was listed as one of the least healthiest cities. We know that our high populations of Black and brown populations are most affected by the standard American diet, right? We're eating a whole bunch of processed carbohydrates. Tulane University's School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine says that we're in food swamps. Food deserts is a big term, but it's not that there's not enough food, it's that the food around us is not healthy, and it's difficult to get away from it. If you have Taco Cabana, you got Bill Miller's, and you have Taco Bell, where are the healthy options, right? San Antonio, in my opinion, has become the capital for fast food, and we're consuming it. I'm guilty myself.
Same here.
Right? And so, what are the opportunities? Well, I think it does come down to access. and education, right? So nutrition literacy, health literacy, food literacy. But when you start digging deeper into it, a lot of it does come down to land and land access. If I want to be a farmer and I want to start a little garden in my front yard or my backyard, I first have to have a home, right? I have to have that land to have access to. And so I think that's one critical component. But an approach that we're taking is working with public spaces, whether it's a park, whether it's a school, whether it's a community center, whether it's a church. Those are the spaces that have community. And I think that you can cultivate this knowledge and you can cultivate these lifestyle behaviors through early intervention, starting at 0, starting at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So, education is key, but also making sure that the resources are there, because if I know how to do something, I then need the tools necessary to do that activity.
And it's a pressing issue, right? When you think about it, by 2050, 70% of the population worldwide is going to live in cities. So the work that you're leading through Gardopia is important for our community in San Antonio. And we need to be more bullish on that idea of urban farming. Absolutely.
Urban farming, urban agriculture, food forests, community gardens, vertical farming, right? There's so many different approaches towards it. And San Antonio was actually considered the winter garden of the United States prior to the urban sprawl that's been created. There is a lot of farmland in San Antonio. There's a lot of opportunity for us to grow a significant amount of food. Could we grow 10% of our food? Could we grow 25% of our food? It's going to take that investment from the city and private organizations to realize that.
Amazing, amazing. Julia, you have any response to that?
Well, you are speaking the language of resilience, and we need local food security to be resilient in the face of these challenges that are coming at us, faster than we can react to. So, also, I wanted to mention, we do have a strong investment in our nature-based solutions around the city, but at the same time, we're losing farm and ranch land faster than any other place in the entire United States. And that is daunting, because once it's gone, it's gone. So I just want to applaud the work that you're doing, but how can we augment it, tenfold, 100-fold, whatever we need to do.
Something that we're looking at is land trusts, land banks, and land conservancies, so that we can make sure that this green space can be put into production and can't be developed over time.
Amazing. In the back, can we quiet down just a little bit, because there's a lot of echo and we can't hear. All right, so the last question is for both of you. So how would you define the best practices to incentivize and promote adopting environmentally friendly practices at the community level and with businesses? And if you can highlight, some of the efforts that both your office and your company, your organization is leading as well.
Great. I'll give 2 really relevant examples that are happening right now. The first is we're working on urban heat island mitigation, and I have some team members in the audience who are heading that up. Really great work. We're one of a handful of large cities across the country that are putting in cool pavement on our streets. It's a new technology. We're testing it out in San Antonio. It's been done in Phoenix and LA, for example, but San Antonio is different. We need to test it here and find out some local data. So we're working with UTSA and some researchers there to actually go out and gather the data that we need to see if this is actually making a difference in urban heat island. How is it affecting the residents? Do we need to do more mitigation, like tree planting, cool roofs, et cetera, et cetera. So data, imperative for this project. One more I'll mention, I think that's fascinating, is we, City of San Antonio, who have collection services through our solid waste management department, who are also represented over there, can get an organics cart, and we put their food waste in the organics cart, and it goes to our Atlas Organics composting facility on the south side of San Antonio, where robots are being trained to pick out the stuff that can't be made into compost through artificial intelligence. So once again, this is groundbreaking. It's not being done in very many cities across the country. Nobody really knows about it unless you happen to just hear about it. So I'm happy to brag about it on solid waste management's behalf, but that data from those robots that are learning to pick out those whatever can't go through to compost is making our compost even richer and our landfills smaller. So it's a good thing.
Thank you, Julia. Steve?
Yes, so there's this cool thing called the Climate Adaptation and Action Plan with the Office of Sustainability. And they have a few objectives. It's called Protect Local Food Security. And so one of them is a State of the Food System report. I'm happy to say that Metro Health is working on a food security assessment, so that's happening. Pursue urban agriculture opportunities, so looking at pilot projects. Gardopia has been a pilot project on a ½ acre of land. It was underutilized land, and we were able to turn it into a robust space for the community that's producing food and creating safe space. Urban agriculture training program. We need new farmers. The average age of a farmer is a 60-year-old white male, right? How do we get our youth involved in these activities? Local crop diversification. Support and enhance the community garden network. Incentivize local food production. There's a program for Texas agriculture called Grow Texan, or Go Texan, you've probably seen it. Why can't we have something called Grow SA? We incentivize local farmers and restaurants to purchase food locally. And then controlled environment agriculture. So Gardopia has our hands in a little bit of all of that. I'm on the Food Policy Council's board as well, and we have 3 policies that we're pushing forward to be able to increase food security here in San Antonio, including a vacant lot program, which would provide, the city has a lot of land that the city owns and could allow folks to use. And to a certain extent, that's stolen land, right? So how do we get land back to people who haven't had it?
Absolutely. Well, thank you both. And I think we have time for one question. 1 minute, a quick question. I see a question over there in the back.
Have you thought about having garden plots at each of the schools, getting the kids involved? That way they can learn how real food tastes. And I know this was done in Berkeley, California, and it was a huge success.
That's a great question. So we are working with 25 schools. By the end of the year, we will be with 45 schools, including 6 school districts. So that is the strategy. There's probably 1,000 schools in San Antonio. There's close to 300,000 youth K through 12. So we have a long way to go, but that is, in my opinion, probably the best strategy. I like to say we're on the 20-year plan. If every kid from 0 to 20 gets this education, then by 2040, it'll be part of the culture, and Gardopia won't even need to exist because everybody here will be doing it.
When I think about the future of San Antonio, we need to be more disciplined and bullish on the idea of resilience and environmental quality efforts. And these 2 leaders are leading the way. So thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Julia, for the time.
All right, so I'd like to welcome back Robert Rivard to moderate this next conversation about access to transportation. Bob, you're welcome to introduce your panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. All right, social hour's over for a few minutes. Take your seats. Quiet down, please. Our next panel is access to transportation, and I'm going to add a word to that, but more than a few words. Access to safe, multimodal transportation, which I think is a goal we all share. Our 2 panelists, David Bemporand, he is a senior transit partner with planner with RS&H, which is a global design and engineering firm. David, come on in and sit down. A lot of you know David from Activate SA, where he was, and he's the only other person besides myself that was crazy enough to ride his bike here today, as far as I know. One more? Okay, so ask us what it's like to ride in 105-degree heat. And then we have David Tilley, and David is with via Metropolitan Transit. Chief Technology Officer, and because Chief Hood is here from the San Antonio Fire Department, welcome Chief. I want to mention that David used to be with the San Antonio Fire Department, and they took him away at VIA, but we're glad to have you guys both here. So I want to talk about the future of multimodal, safe transportation in San Antonio and how we get from where we are to where we need to be, and maybe talking a little bit about where we need to be is where we can start. And David, I'll start with you because of your background with Activate SA. You're really with a real global firm now that's all over the world, but you were very much local and on the ground before that. And like me as a cyclist, every day you're out there assessing the pros and cons of being in traffic.
Absolutely. I'll say thank you, Bob. Thank you, everyone here. What an incredible event. Huge shout out to our friends at the Office of Innovation. Y'all rock. To Bob's question, you know, being a cyclist in San Antonio is not easy. Being someone who wants and is excited about riding a bike is not easy. Being a pedestrian or a transit user is not easy. We've had generation after generation of the smartest minds on this continent making an amazing system for car mobility. You can get up to the minute traffic information on every street in this city. Why can't you have that for the maintenance of a greenway trail? We can't have that information for debris in a bike lane. It just doesn't exist. We have incredible traffic counts all over the city to know where people are moving in every way except multimodally. We've got data from VIA, and I can't wait to hand it over to David to talk about that, but pedestrian counts, bike counts, we don't know how people are using the infrastructure. And right now, I have the real privilege of working with the Transportation Department on the update for the city's bike plan. And that kind of information is going to be essential. We're collecting it now, and we're going to be collecting it now over the next 2 years, so we know as a city what is working, what is not, and what we need to do. Because it's hard right now, and it shouldn't be.
David, the Texas Department of Public Safety in their latest data release ranks San Antonio at the bottom of all the major cities in the state for pedestrian and cycling safety. And we are a Vision Zero city, which we've been since at least 2015, as I recall. New York Times had a story this morning saying the rate of pedestrian fatalities in the United States hit a 41-year high in 2022. So we have a real issue, not just locally, not just in the state, but across the country, almost entirely in cities, and almost entirely after the sun goes down, when you have two factors, darkness and alcohol. And when you don't have protected pedestrian crossings, when you don't have protected bike lanes, you don't have dedicated bus lanes, you're asking for trouble. And somehow redesigning a city to have those things is the challenge, is it not?
Absolutely. We have enough Davids on the stage, but I want to introduce you all, just tell you about a guy. His name's David Rodarte, and he's not here today because when he was riding on his bike through a new intersection that the city has just improved on Fredericksburg and Cincinnati, which has beautiful green paint and striping, and it's a best practice facility in our city. He was hit by a car. He's around still, but
that's good.
I know he's injured because alcohol, likely, and darkness. In Texas, according to the US Census in 2020, cyclists and pedestrians only make up 2% of work commutes to work. They make up 21% of roadway fatalities. Not injuries, not crashes, fatalities. That is a design problem. We are not building the right kind of infrastructure to keep people safe and giving them multimodal options. One other point I'll make. In 1997, the city passed its comp plan. In its urban design solutions, it says we should limit the use of center left turn lanes. You've seen them everywhere. Yellow stripe, yellow markings, open, yellow markings, yellow stripe. That was passed in 1997. Since then, we have probably deployed, we don't have any data on it because the information side of things are lacking, upwards of 500 miles of that. The city maintains 4,300 miles of roads. If we are not following the design policies that we ourselves have set, how are we going to combat this? I'll also say that intersection there at Cincinnati and Fredericksburg has one of those center left turn lanes, what most people in transportation planning call a suicide lane, because they're that dangerous. We need to do better. We have an opportunity to right now, and I'm so excited to be speaking to everyone here who wants to see better.
David Tilley, I want to mention before any conversation that we ever have about VIA Metropolitan Transit, we should note that San Antonio only gives 1/2 cent of sales tax historically to VIA compared to a whole cent in Houston, Dallas, and Austin. That has added up to tens and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars over the decades. And so you've had to do more with less. And yes, voters have decided to give you another 1/4 cent or 8 cent sales tax in the future, but it's not here yet. So you're facing a lot of challenges in adapting, and the funding is an issue. But talk a little bit about it.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, by the way, for having me. And if it's not clear, this is the David with bicycles and David with buses. And to your point, VIA has had a challenge financially relative to other cities comparatively, and I feel like that has made them almost innately more driven towards efficiency and innovation, because they have to do more with less. The first 40 years of VIA don't hold a candle to the past 4 years in terms of innovation. And what that innovation is doing is driving us closer to accessibility, closer to equity, and closer to a better transportation system. Specifically, VIA's Keep SA Moving initiative. It's voter approved projects. For example, VIA Link, which is on-demand service, 3 zones here in San Antonio, quite large. We're working on a 4th zone. And when I say on demand, I mean just like Uber or Lyft, very similar to Uber or Lyft, where you tap your glass and VIA comes to you. Right? That never happened before. And so it takes you where you want to go, right? You're not jumping on a route and trying to figure out where you need to be. And so that kind of revolution is happening now. It's growing. It's been proven to be efficient. A study came out last year where for one of those zones in particular, there was a 36% cost improvement in efficiency per passenger for on-demand service versus stereotypical route ridership. So that's the direction we're headed, and there's a lot more that I'd like to say about it, but I know you have more questions.
Well, say something about bus rapid transit, David, because Julian Murphy was just on the last panel and talking about the climate adaptation plan. We've got to get people out of their automobiles more, whether they're walking, whether they're riding bikes, or whether they're using mass transit, which frankly in this climate is really the only viable option for a lot of people. So when is bus rapid transit going to be a reality throughout the city?
Sure. So we do have BRT with Primo Line, which everyone's familiar with, but more importantly, where we're headed is advanced rapid transit. And that involves a lot of innovation and technology. Right now, VIA's calling it VIA Rapid Green Line. It's going to go from the airport all the way to downtown. And the technology involved in it is off-board payments. It's traffic prioritization. It's dedicated lanes. The safety features, and there were studies done where San Pedro is a primary portion of this corridor, where we all know that there are concerns with pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, and through this initiative, it's going to help increase safety and improve efficiency throughout.
And is that already operating, or that's coming?
This is coming. Right now it's planned for 2027.
Okay. And that means Elon Musk isn't going to dig a tunnel between our airport and downtown?
No tunnels. But this specific line is going to really improve for people traveling to San Antonio. It's going to improve economically, everything up and down from the airport through downtown.
So I think the transformation of I-10 from somewhere outside of 1604 coming south and going north to where there is a reserved lane for people that are in vehicles with 2 or more people, that's been a real success for those of us that have used it, and you're moving at sometimes twice the speed of traffic right next to you. When will we see buses have that kind of dedicated lane on our expressway system? Or will we not see that?
On the expressway, I think Stone Oak is a great example of planning. The Stone Oak Park and Ride was built specifically with the plan to have a dedicated HOV lane, and offhand I don't know how far in the future that's still planned. But there is a long-term vision, and that's where it's headed. And so the ART line, the green rapid transit line, is going to be a first step where we have dedicated lanes for transit. And that's important. I think once people start to see it in action, there's going to be a lot more political power growth and support for these types of initiatives.
And can you tell people here that don't use VIA some of the innovations that have occurred? You don't have to have a pocket full of coins anymore to ride the bus. Route frequency has been increased, and you can actually sit at a bus stop and easily use a smartphone and find out when the next bus is coming, and where you want to go. You can program that in and find out what number bus you want to transfer to. Or...
Yeah, absolutely. The list is long, but let me start with Navalins for the visually impaired. We have a pilot program at 100 stops where there are specific codes which help people with visual impairment easily navigate to the bus stop, provides them valuable information. We have the Go Mobile Plus app, which allows people to easily purchase fare and ride on our bus. We're working towards right now improving the fare infrastructure beyond where it is today, but that is working towards fare capping, which would mean that fare equity for all riders, which is huge. We have riders that choose to get on the bus and put their money in every single day, and maybe they don't have a choice to buy a monthly pass, and because of that, they wind up paying more, and VIA is working towards a solution for those types of scenarios.
And what are you doing to keep university students from having to commute in individual vehicles?
VIA is heavily promoting UPass, which allows students to ride for free as long as they're a student. VIA also offers the semester pass, which for $38, you get 6 months, half a year of service across VIA. And to be clear, that includes VIA Link, so on-demand service. If you're in one of those zones, for $38, you get 6 months of on-demand service and VIA service throughout the city.
All right. The other David, I know you're not with Activate SA anymore, but there's new leadership there. It's coming back. Would you talk a little bit about that nonprofit and its mission and where it fits into this whole scheme?
Absolutely. You know, I have right now the great privilege of working on the City of San Antonio's bike network plan because the city has recognized a great need to build safe infrastructure, and part of that came from the grassroots advocacy of what became Activate SA, a group of people who just wanted to see safe, connected, active transportation infrastructure in the city. Simple as that. You know, we've heard a lot recently, a lot of very, very powerful people in our city talking about back to basics, simple improvements. Activate SA has the idea of taking that and saying, you know, it's great to go back to basics and do the simple stuff, but if you're gonna do it for the people aren't getting served right now. The team at Activate SA is focused on complete streets, roadway safety, making sure that our complete streets policy in the city of San Antonio actually reflects best practices. We passed a complete streets policy over a decade ago, and we haven't updated the designs that organizations around the world have implemented because our plan doesn't say we have to. It's their goal at Activate SA and our goal with the bike network plan to make sure that when we pass a plan, we don't just say, okay, good enough, designs are in. But you have to go back every year, maybe more than once a year, and say, has someone done this better? Is there another city out there? Is there a Boston or a Minneapolis that are peer cities? Let's be clear, San Antonio is a world-class city, and it should have world-class bike infrastructure, and we should have plans that ensure that we implement.
Amen. One quick question, or we're going to get out of here like a lightning bolt, because Emily Royal is looking at me.
Hi, my name is Amina Thomas. I had a question because throughout this conversation, we've been talking about the need for data for pedestrians. I was actually on a Zoom talk a couple of weeks ago at ULI about pedestrian data, and Activate SA was also in the chat. And the presenter made a quote saying that her little quip about the lack of pedestrian data, she likes to say, well, if you don't count it, then it means that people don't count at all. So what plans have San Antonio, what plans are we making to count pedestrians as far as getting that data and seeing how they move throughout the city?
Thank you.
You know, can you answer that? Because if you can't, 2 panels from now we'll answer it, but if you want to take a crack at it, go for it.
Yeah, that's no problem. I'll speak very briefly. The city of San Antonio, both through the bike plan, is going to be looking at both bike and pedestrian counts, is working on that. There are also data sources out there that we are utilizing. It's called Streetlight. These are private data sources that we have gotten access to so that we can know, based on cell phone movements, where pedestrians are. But that only includes people with cell phones. That only includes people on certain routes. How can we get a global, really citywide view of it? And I do not know of an effort to make that happen. And I know a good amount, and I hope that there's a better answer 2 panels from now.
We have to push for that. You just mentioned streetlights.com. They just came out with their top 30 cities with the worst speed limits. Unfortunately, we finished at number 22. That means there's only 8 cities in the United States, major cities, where people are going even faster than they are in San Antonio. That's not a list we want to be on, and we need to change that. And when we slow down traffic, we're going to save lives of pedestrians, and we need to push for it. So on that note, we'll end and give the phone back, or the bike back to Emily Royal, wherever she is, and right here. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Ideas. I want to just do a quick round of applause for Centro, our partners who made this possible. An incredibly dedicated group of folks activating downtown. All right, I would like to invite Beto Altamirano for the next panel on public safety. Beto.
Thank you, Emily. That was a great panel we just heard from. I want to introduce 2 great public servants for the community of San Antonio. Assistant Chief Karen Falls from SAPD. And Charles Hood, Fire Chief for San Antonio Fire Department. So thank you for staying here longer with us. We appreciate that very much. I gotta jump right into it.
Okay.
First question. This is gonna be for Fire Chief Hood. Recognizing the link between public safety and creating inclusive, vibrant communities, what steps is the city taking to actively involve residents and community stakeholders in decision-making processes related to public safety measures? How do we involve the community? How do we get them interested and engaged with the San Antonio Fire Department?
That's a long question.
It is.
And so
it really
I
is.
want to thank each and every one of you for being here. And so to start to answer that question, each and every one of you in this room, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your neighbor, your best friend is going to access 911 systems in your lifetime. Statistically speaking, everybody here is going to call. It may be in San Diego, it may be in Tucson, and it may be here, and your chances of survival are going to be so much better here. So I want you to know, because I've heard people say best, world class, this is a world class fire department. So I'll explain that to you, and then we will talk about the stakeholder pieces that bring our residents as far as into seeing what we're doing. We are an ISO 1 rated department, which is make sure insurance lower. So they look at our stations, our water systems, our radios, everything that we do, so we're the highest class you can be. And then we're an accredited agency, which means only 4 departments of large departments in the nation hold both of those classifications. So 0.4% of the nation is protected by a Class 1 accredited department. So you should be very proud of that, because we are one of the finest departments in the world. So, thank you. We set off on our accreditation process in 2018. We brought in members of the community. We brought in our internal stakeholders, uniform and civilian. We are going through accreditation at this time, where we invited over 200 civilians from different council districts all over the city to hear what they wanted or what they thought was important as far as what their fire department should be bringing them. The other thing that we did is my most important members, as far as the men and women that work with us, uniform and civilian, it's about 2,000 of us. We sat down with different groups to talk about how we could make this department better. And so that is part of our strategic plan to make sure that we are seeing what the community needs. The community thinks that, okay, we need fire trucks and ambulances. That is not sustainable. What we need to do is invest in technology, in programs, and education that are going to help you save yourself. Because a lot of times when we get there to that child that's locked in a car, to that hoarder who is stuck in their house and it's on fire and we can't get in, to the child that's fell in the pool? How do we educate? How do we make sure that we have those messages going out in English and in Spanish? And how do we make sure that people understand their responsibility to save themselves? Because a lot of times, by the time we get there, it is absolutely too late. So again, we have included the stakeholders, we've included our members. We'll be accredited again next February, and they look at every single thing that we do to make sure that we are providing the best possible care for each and every one of you. And I'm going to turn this over, but when you see a fire truck show up, every fire truck in San Antonio, there's over 100, those big old trucks, has a 12-lead monitor on it. We carry 40 medications, so we're bringing an intensive care unit to your house. And so again, be mindful of that, because when I came here, I said I want the same care for my kid if he falls in the pool as anybody else. So we have to take care of ourselves as a family, and then we go out and take care of the residents of this community. So again, we're so happy to be here and answer any other questions that you have.
Thank you, Chief Hood. So my next question is for Chief Fox. It's about crime. It's about reducing crime. Reducing crime is an essential aspect of public safety. How does the city collaborate with local emergency responders, community organizations, and residents to develop effective crime prevention strategies that address the root causes and create sustainable solutions? And let me just do a quick plug-in. Is it correct that you're the second assistant chief in the history of SAPD?
Well, I'm the second female.
The second female, yes. That's correct.
I appreciate that. That's
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's a great question. It truly is a great question. When you identify a root cause of anything, you get to the real issue. You take any leadership class, you take anything like that, root cause is the center of the problem. So SAPD definitely acknowledges and agrees that addressing the root cause of crime is vital to finding sustainable solutions. It's a must. We have to identify those root causes. So SAPD collaborates with numerous community organizations on a daily basis. And we do that, we find very diverse organizations who specialize in social services, be it services for the unhoused, for those who are suffering food insecurities, for those who are suffering from, you name it, education issues, whether it's mental health support. Those are just a few of the organizations that SAPD collaborates with. And we do that so we can identify those underlying issues that affect crime. That poverty is a big issue in San Antonio, as is social inequality, as well as just lack of opportunities. That some people, they don't get the same opportunities as everybody else. So when we aim to create those an environment where we can find the root cause, we can create a less conducive environment for criminal activity. And when I say that, let's say a police officer makes a call to a house and they realize that there's a family who has food insecurity. And they realize that an individual there is having to go to their local H-E-B and steal food because they don't have the money to buy food for dinner. And so somebody in that house is constantly stealing food. We've found the cause is that they don't have the money. They're in a poverty situation, and if we can connect them to some nonprofit, some social service that can help them with that, we're going to reduce that family being engaged with the criminal justice system, because we've now connected them to a service that can help them with that criminal activity, that issue that they've been involved with. SAPD constantly, on a daily basis, collaborates with mental health. And we do that because we share a lot of the same services between SAPD and mental health. Family violence, mental health issues. There's a lot of shared services that we have. So we collaborate with mental health on a daily basis.
Can you provide an example?
Sure. So the San Antonio Police department, of course, investigates family violence, both at the misdemeanor level, at the family level. So all of our substations house the misdemeanor family violence detectives. And so now we also, within those substations, house the advocates that are employed by Metro Health. So we have Metro Health advocates working side by side with SAPD family violence detectives to provide services for individuals who are victims of family violence. So that's a collaborative that we've been working on for well over 2 years now, and it's a fantastic program. So SAPD, follows the cases while Metro Health provides this follow-up services for children and for the victims and their families. So that's a collaborative that will last forever because it works so well for both city departments.
Absolutely, and it's so important, right, to bring down those silos, right, and be more collaborative, right, as a department.
We have to, because if everybody continues in their own silos, we don't work together. And as the fire chief said, it takes a community. We have to work with our stakeholders. We have to work with these organizations to get things done.
Absolutely. So we have 5 minutes left. I can ask another question, or we can go with the audience. What do you think? Audience members. So let's do the audience members.
Tell you what. Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute.
Go for it.
So, the fire service in San Antonio is like the Jetsons. So, you're sitting there with that blue phone right there. If any of you call 911 right this second, we're going to ask you if you have a smartphone. And if you have a smartphone, we're going to say, we're going to send you a link. This link doesn't cost you anything. It's not an app. But we're going to send you a link, and it's going to allow us to look at your face. I'm going to geofence your face. I'm going to tell what your temporal pulse is. I'm going to tell what your respiratory rate is. I'll be able to see if you're aphasic, which means you've had a stroke. I'll be able to look at the environment behind you. And I'm putting a paramedic in your living room or an intersection in about 30 seconds. So that is saving us about 28 unit responses every single day. And that's the equivalent of 2 ambulances, which is about $4 million. So we're trying to enhance our technology to get to everybody that calls us. And we realize that everyone that calls does not need a fire truck. They don't need to go to the hospital. They need a cab, or they need Meals on Wheels, or they need pharmaceuticals delivered to their homes. So again, this is space age. And again, nobody else is doing this. So we started this program about 2 years ago as a pilot. It's fully implemented. So if you call us right this second, we're going to see your face when you call us. And it also helps out on fire situations, because we'll tell you, turn the phone around. We can see that fire. We can broadcast that information to our command officers. Might have taken a little over a minute, but thank you.
No, that's impressive. That's impressive.
I'll admit the fire department's very cool. They have a lot of cool toys. However, has anybody called 911 lately, or have you received a link on your phone from the police department to tell you how long it's going to take for the officer to get to your call? Has anybody gotten that?
Not a lot of people calling 911 lately, which is, I think it's a good thing.
That's a good thing. So the police department has a piece of technology we're just as proud. It's called Spider Tech. It's a community notification system. So one of the biggest complaints we as a police department get is, why did it take so long for the policeman to get to my house or get to my wreck? Can anybody relate to that? So we have this technology. We've had it now for about 3.5 years. It's called Spider Tech. And so you call 911, and so automatically, as soon as you hang up with the call taker, you'll get a message to your cell phone. It doesn't work to a landline. We haven't figured that piece out yet. But you'll get a notification saying the officer is en route, should be at your location within 5 to 7, 8 minutes. If he's delayed, then you'll get that notification to you saying he's delayed, the new time is such and such time. And afterwards, you'll get it after the call's handled. After that's over, you'll get a customer survey, and that's when you get to rate your police department. How was the customer service? How was the response time? I think there's, 4, 5, 6 questions, and maybe a free text box. I could be leading that. I don't know if there's a free text o'clock tonight. But that's your way to grade that policeman right there on the spot. And we have the same thing on the investigative side. As your case processes through the investigator,
Amazing.
you'll get that same technology as well. So
Incredible.
technology is the name of the game. And as your departments, your public safety departments are acquiring this new technology, it's only going to benefit the community.
Absolutely. So we ran out of time, but can we fit in one question? Yes, we got time for one question. Yes, let me give you the microphone.
Chief Fox, I had a quick question in regards to dispatching. Sorry. Are there any ideas surrounding dispatching mental health workers to certain situations? I know different communities have different needs. Equity looks different. You know, that lens is very different. But can you speak to a little bit of all these organizations you work with? Are they able to do ride-alongs? Are they able to see the needs so that way they can actually pinpoint and help PD? I know it's a tenuous effort to go from, you know, city and also you need that community participation. So is there any talks? I know when I travel abroad, you know, I often see a mental health worker dispatched first before I see anything. And I know it's completely different, but there are different needs in certain communities that we misassociate or, you know, crime and mental health.
You know, that's a fantastic question, and I appreciate that. The mental health unit for the police department falls under my purview, within my bureau. There's so many changes occurring right now with mental health and the way police agencies respond to mental health calls. For the San Antonio Police Department, we have been on the forefront, really trailblazers when it has come to mental health unit. Our department started the mental health program in 2008 before any other police agency in the country began a mental health unit. We started with 2 officers. We now have 20 sworn members of our mental health unit. We have our SA Core team, which only focuses on mental health. It's a multidisciplinary team, which is made up of a police officer, a paramedic, and a clinician from the Center for Healthcare Services. There have been talks still ongoing about whether we need to put clinicians in our dispatch center. Those are ongoing, and my vote is to do that. That way we can have a licensed person deciding, hey, this is a 911 crisis and we need to send this particular team or that sort of thing. We've talked about using this Good Sam app that Chief Hood talked about through that clinician response in dispatch. There's so many efforts that are still ongoing. We're still building that mental health team, and it changes almost daily. So, and if you're interested in doing ride-along, absolutely, we allow those. And so all you have to do is come to headquarters or one of the substations, and we can certainly get you set up for that.
Well, we got to wrap this up, but I want to take time to thank you both, Chief Fox and Chief Hood, for the work that you do, and to the men and women, you know, both from the fire department, the police department, who put everything on the line every day to protect the residents of San Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you, Beto. And we have arrived at our last conversation. I do want to flag that we have Slow Boogies and El Winesero over here. Some great, delicious dogs and some root beer for y'all. If you're hungry, please take advantage of that. I would like to welcome back to the stage for our final discussion, Robert Rivard, to introduce his panelists.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for everyone sticking with us for the last panel of the evening, but we've got a great lineup for you. David Robinson Jr., Development Manager at Weston Urban. David, come on up. Good to be with you. My former Express News colleague, Brian Chasnoff, now the Assistant Director for Communications and Engagement at the City of San Antonio, and somebody that's really embedded in public works right now. Good to see both of you guys. Thanks for being here. Brian, you're a runner. And David, I see you tooling around downtown and Southtown on your Vespa. I think it's a Vespa. So I know both of you guys care a lot about safe infrastructure, because you both want to be on your feet or on your scooter and be able to come and go around downtown without doing it in a vehicle. So I'm going to start with you, David. You guys are building the city our children want to live in, and a lot of it's right around here, including this building. I guess someday somebody's going to live in this building, right?
Actually, this is going to be Weston Urban's office space.
This is Mike up? Oh, is this where you're going to work?
This is going to be Weston Urban's office space here.
Well, that's great. Well, tell us about how your team is approaching really 20 plus acres of Western downtown development. You've got historic buildings, you've got new buildings, you've got San Pedro Creek. You're thinking a lot about mobility, about density of residential living down here. How is all that going to happen and happen safely?
Yeah, it's going to happen slowly. Yeah, I think one thing I've learned just in real estate and anything in civic life, it takes time. It takes a lot of collaboration, it takes a lot of community, and there's a lot of stakeholders that need to all be rowing in the same direction to make anything happen, especially in the urban form. So for us, we control about 25 acres in downtown San Antonio, and it's been a 13-year journey of which I've been there 3 of them. But it's changed. So originally, between the Rand building, Frost Tower, the Siboney building, there's a lot of office with ground floor activation, ground floor retail, and COVID happened and completely reoriented everybody's thought process from investors, from office workers, how they're spending their time, where they're going in their daily pattern, and downtown was not in the beneficiary side of that. Everything went out to the suburbs, everything went to New Braunfels and San Marcos, Dripping Springs, Stone Oak, Alcantara. So we've really been trying to fight that narrative and bring people back downtown. And a big part of that
Quiet, please, thanks.
A big part of that is residential. So we need to make downtown a place where people are living and spending their time and wanting to have convenience from the place where they're living. Pearl's done a really good job of that. Where they really started with hospitality and food and beverage, but then very quickly got to residential. And then that sustained a lot of their retail, their office, and really has created community. And in downtown, we don't quite have that yet. We are doing everything we can. We're under construction on 300 Main, which is 354 apartment units across about 3 blocks from here. And then we're about to start construction on the Continental Hotel, which is actually an apartment complex 2 blocks from here. So housing is the big focus, and to the Jane Jacobs Eyes on the Street analogy, the more people who are here, we've been talking a lot about technology and data, but a lot of things have already been figured out. And the more people, the more presence, that leads to a safer environment in a lot of ways. And so that's the biggest hope is, more residents lead to more vibrancy for small business and retail, food and beverage that then drive office as a more convenient amenity close to where you live.
And give us a timeline on 300 Main and the Continental Hotel conversion and I believe the tower that's going to go up on that, right?
Yeah, so 300 Main is it's a year into construction and we're about a year out from delivery. So summer of 2024, it'll deliver. And then for Continental Hotel, we're hoping to start to break ground in the next couple months, and that'll be another 2-year construction timeline.
Brian, one of the things we've learned is transformation doesn't come without a little pain. And when we look at the 2017 bond and see what the pandemic did to the timeline, a normal 5-year timeline, and we look at how ambitious some of the street levels of transformation was, whether we're talking about North St. Mary's or right in front of us here on East Houston Street over to North New Braunfels and some other areas, it's been very difficult. And you have this unique perspective of, you were on the outside back when we did this public-private partnership between the city and Western Urban and Frost Bank, but now you're inside the city. The bureaucracy is a very, very big machine with a lot of moving parts in it. What are your impressions so far about how we're doing and what role you play in that?
Thanks for the question, Bob. For me, it's paramount to have coordination between departments, and I actually feel like that's a lot of where I've focused my energies over the past 3 months. I've only been here for 3 months, but for example, the Transportation Department and Public Works are tightly coordinated on implementing Vision Zero countermeasures, federally recommended pedestrian safety countermeasures in the 2022 bond projects. And you talk about some of the pain that folks have felt over the course of the construction for 2017 bond projects. Just coordinating the economic development opportunities, the economic development department with Public Works, so that everybody can pool resources and make sure everything is tightly aligned, I feel like that goes a long way.
People don't realize that historically, as cities developed, state-owned streets became part of inside the city limits. Broadway, Roosevelt, parts of Presa. The Texas Department of Public Safety does not really have a multimodal philosophy. They're all about highways and vehicles. And we've run into some serious roadblocks now politically with the state not wanting the city to move forward with some of these progressive complete street designs. I wonder how much that's changing the equation for you and public works and transportation. And David, I wonder how much after Brian responds, that sort of Weston Urban has had to stop and rethink whether or not any of your projects are going to be impacted one way or the other by that tension that's very palpable.
Well, I've actually been heartened by a lot of the designs that I've seen come out of future projects. Start with downtown. I mean, North Main, where the main project is going up, you've got buffered bike lanes that are going in on that. That's a 2017 project. And then, Market Street, Dolorosa, there's all kinds of street improvements that are coming in the coming years, and we've got protected bike lanes on those. So I feel like there really is, the city is fully on board with understanding the importance of these safety countermeasures and really making that into the design of these projects.
And are we going to be able to go forward with every bond project from 2017 and 2022, or are they going to have to be amended to take into account what we can and can't do on some of those state-owned streets that we thought were going to come into city ownership, but now the state's retaining title?
You're asking a question that a lot of people want the answer to. And I wish I could give you the answer right now, but stay tuned.
Yeah, I just to add, again, we talked a lot about data across a lot of things, and I think data is an amazing tool, technology is an amazing tool, but we have some fundamental challenges across the whole country right now, and I think it boils down to just a profound distrust of between the public and the public sector, and until that starts to get mended, it's going to be hard to accomplish anything. And so right now with the state, you have this just nasty, politically just poisoned environment, and has nothing to do with good policy, has nothing to do with good design. Those are retributions with stakeholders and elected officials thinking they're appeasing some constituency. And so that boils down and trickles down toxicity to everywhere. And so I think one thing I'd hope with technology and with data is, where can we find those easy wins, right? Like if we're going to start to rebuild that public trust, how can we identify, what are the paths to just the quickest success, whether it be the roads, right? Right now at the local level, it's been a mess, right? It's just been a complete disaster. There's plenty of finger pointing. It doesn't matter. No, we have incomplete projects that are affecting everybody, real estate, small businesses, pedestrians, everybody. So it's like, well, how can we just put points on the board and just start completing projects, just start having effective communication, start finding ways forward? And so I think if we use data and technology to start identifying those easy wins, to start to prove to the public that our public sector is actually competent and can be entrusted with our funds, that's how we step forward. But I think it boils down to how do we rebuild that trust? How do we start proving that we can function as a city or a state or as a country in general?
I'm hearing some private sector frustration there, Brian, but I would add to that post-pandemic, every downtown, virtually in every major city, went through this profound hollowing out of office towers. Hybrid work became a reality, remote work became a reality. We're seeing continuing tensions between employers, employees wanting people to come back to work. People have gotten used to not being back in the office regularly and don't want to come back at all, or they only want to come back on their own terms. And so we're faced in our city with the downtown where something has to give, because what we were doing from the time of, say, SA 2020 going forward was building this city that was all about this vibrant, mixed-use environment. And now we're seeing there's not going to be as many people in offices as there were, certainly not 5 days a week. And we've got to reinvent that formula. And I wonder, from both the public sector and the private sector, do you think we need a big plan where we all get on the same page about that? Or is that really not the approach that we need, and we just forward as every city's trying to move forward, reinventing things as we go?
Well, I think it goes without saying that the world changed profoundly 2-3 years ago, and it's slowly getting back to the way that the world we knew before the pandemic. And I hope that everybody is aligned and on board with changing together. And we all want strong downtown. We all want a vibrant city, and there's no reason that we shouldn't have those goals aligned in the public and the private sector. It serves both of us.
Yeah, like we have the plans, the SA Tomorrow plan, and we have 13 designated regional growth centers where we want to funnel investment and growth and density, which then enables public transit and all these other things that we want. So it's like let's follow that. Let's allocate resources towards those areas as well. So I think we do have a plan. And I think there's been a lot of folks from the city, from the county, that have put a ton of thought into the way things should grow. I think the realities are really different. It's a very tough economic time right now. We're in a recession, and people have been kind of tiptoeing around it for the last year, but it's a bloodbath. If you're trying to raise money for a company, for a construction project, to buy a building, it's an entirely different world, and that's going to really slow things down. And I think San Antonio's been benefiting, especially since the last recession, since 07, 08. Like, we've just been benefiting from this, like, all tides, all boats are rising, and that could really change. And so I'd love to see more incentives, and I think using data, using technology to be very targeted on how that happens, and I think housing has to be at the forefront of that, which can then drive amenities, retail, food and beverage, small business, and then also, lastly, office.
David, if we look at the sort of deadly combination of supply chain interruptions, inflation, and now the high cost of borrowing money, has that slowed Weston Urban down?
Yeah, so 300 Main, it took a year longer to get started on that project. And then Continental, we were trying to get started on Continental before 300 Main. So that's been 4 years in the making to get going. And so, we're pushing hard on executing, but it's gonna, everything that anybody had planned, those are pushed back by years. So projects that, there are projects that have been proposed that you've seen printed renderings on, they've been at least pushed back by, if not multiple years, if they ever happen. So it's a really, really challenging environment to get anything done.
Brian, David mentioned the SA Tomorrow plan, which was actually chaired by Ron Nirenberg when he was a council person before he became mayor, and it's in effect. And one of the things it really did was make all of us mindful of the fact that the city is going to grow by 1 million people by 2040, and what are the implications and the challenges for that. Last month, the US Census just came out with its new data. Austin moved past San Jose, California. It's now the 10th largest city in the country. We're the 7th. So you have these two cities that the census said will grow into a mega metro of 10 million people by 2050. That's daunting when you think about it. And you mentioned all these cities people are going to in the I-35 corridor and thereabouts after the pandemic that are New Braunfels, Round Rock, Georgetown. These are some of the fastest growing smaller, mid-sized cities in the country. And I wonder if SA Tomorrow, Brian, is that a front of mind plan still within City Hall? Is that something that everybody's still keenly aware of and on board with?
As far as I know, it is. I personally haven't come into contact with it in my current position. I'm really sort of see myself on the ground with Public Works right now, making sure that we're engaging with business owners. These various projects that are still ongoing. So I'm taking more of a granular approach personally to my communications job right now, and the grand visioning, something that I can pay more attention to as I continue.
I think that's a full-time job. I can appreciate that. And there's been a lot of talk tonight about dashboards and transparency and user-friendly data. Are we going to be at the point where you'll be able to go onto the new city website and check for a timely update on this project or that project along with a timeline?
That's a major goal of mine, actually. And there is a dashboard that's in the works, hopefully coming in the next couple months, where not only will you be able to see when a project is estimated to be completed, but any critical issue that comes up, because everyone knows these projects can change and the unexpected happens. Sometimes the city grants extensions to these contractors. And so those extensions aren't necessarily considered delays technically, but to everyone else on the ground, it is a delay because it's taking longer. So just taking into account, coming from the reporting world, thinking like a layperson and thinking, how does this translate to the general public? What do they need to know? What's going to impact their daily lives, and how do we get them that information as cleanly and as efficiently as possible? That's the challenge that the city's facing and that I'm facing in this role, and we're really working on it.
David, you talked about the important relationship between the public and the public sector, and there's nothing more deadly than an information vacuum, right, Brian? I mean, if people don't know the answer to something, they just see something that's unexpected and unwelcome, they think the worst about everybody. And so it's important, I think, that you do that and it becomes interactive so that people can speak back to the city. My guess is we're past the 1 minute time. Looking at him, I told you we'd get you out of here by 11:45, and I'm right on track. Emily, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, David and Brian. This was great, and the other Brian, and the City of Innovation, and Centro if they're still here. I hope we do it again, periodically. Be great. Thank you. Thank all of you.
All right. Thank you all for coming out and participating. This is just the beginning of the conversation. We are so excited to catalyze our collaborations with all of you and stay connected on that topic. We've got 2 upcoming events that you can join to stay connected with our team. The first is Smart SA Sandbox. If you haven't been to one before, this is really our way of democratizing access to technology in San Antonio. We get kids, families out to sign up for STEM and coding classes and actually experiment with smart city technologies and get to know the city staff that are building them. Definitely come out. That is a kid-friendly event. We also are going to host the Intelligent City Summit coming up. So for those of you who are business partners in our communities, this is an excellent opportunity to network and get connected as well. Next slide, please. And then finally, of course, please get onto our website. I can't express enough. This site is here as a resource for you. You can send us emails. We'll try to get to it. Trust me, it's going to be a heck of a lot faster if you get on that website. And send us your information that way and stay connected to all the work that we're doing. And then, of course, Lauren Tarin manages our social media accounts. So follow those too. You can follow us on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn as well. Please stay connected that way. And definitely get onto the site to stay connected to our team. So with that, I just want to say thank you. This is not the last event that we're going to do like this. We're going to check back in, and hopefully next time, everybody who's talking about a project is talking about a project that we help them achieve and accomplish in partnership with you all. So thank you for coming out.